There are places where time stops. A hallway where sunlight still falls on polished floors, where ghosts of laughter linger in the air. Branham High School in San Jose remembers June 1978 differently than most places remember summer. It remembers blood pooling on linoleum, a scream that echoed through empty corridors, a teacher who believed in second chances until one student proved her wrong. For 47 years, that hallway held its breath. Detectives retired, evidence aged, the suspect died without confession. The case became legend, then memory, then almost forgotten whisper. But some truths refuse burial. Some wounds, no matter how old, still bleed when touched. In early 2025, a phone call shattered the silence. A family member spoke words that had festered for decades, and suddenly a half-century of questions collapsed into a single, terrible answer. How long does it take for the truth to come home? Before we get into the story, drop a comment with your country and the time right now. The morning of June 16, 1978, arrives like any other at Branham High School. Sunlight streams through classroom windows, casting golden rectangles across empty desks. The building hums with the quiet energy of an academic year winding down. Teachers move through hallways with rolled posters and cardboard boxes, their footsteps echoing against lockers painted institutional green. Diane Peterson stands in her English classroom, stacking essays into manila folders. At 26, she carries herself with a calm authority that makes students feel safe. Her desk is organized pens in a ceramic cup, gradebook aligned perpendicular to the blotter, a framed photograph of her family angled toward her chair. She wears a simple blouse and skirt, professional but approachable. The chalkboard behind her still bears the fading outline of sentence diagrams from her final lesson. She glances at the clock. 3:15. The building will close soon. She slides the last folder into her leather satchel and surveys the room one final time. Everything in order, everything as it should be. Outside her window, students drift across the parking lot toward waiting cars. Laughter carries on the breeze. Summer stretches before them, bright, uncomplicated, full of possibility. Diane locks her classroom door and walks toward the main office to return her keys. Her footsteps are measured, deliberate. She passes trophy cases displaying decades of athletic achievements, bulletin boards announcing summer reading programs, water fountains that gurgle when the building settles. A janitor waves as she passes. She returns the gesture with a smile. By 4 o'clock, the building is silent. The janitor makes his rounds, checking doors, turning off lights. He locks the main entrance and heads toward the parking lot, unaware that somewhere in the shadowed corridors behind him, something has shifted. A figure moves through the English department wing. The motion is furtive, purposeful. A student lingers near Diane Peterson's classroom door, though the building has long been dismissed. The figure pauses, glances down the hallway, then disappears around a corner. Security logs will later show no forced entry, no alarms triggered, no evidence of intrusion. But someone was there. Morning light breaks through the same windows 24 hours later. A student arrives early, backpack slung over one shoulder, moving through the quiet building with the easy confidence of someone who belongs. The student approaches the English department wing to retrieve a forgotten textbook. The hallway smells faintly of floor wax and old paper. Then, the student stops. Diane Peterson lies motionless on the floor outside her classroom. Her blouse is stained dark, pooling beneath her. One arm is extended, fingers slightly curled, as if reaching for something just out of grasp. Her face is turned toward the lockers, expression frozen in a moment of shock. The student's scream shatters the stillness. Within minutes, the building erupts into chaos. Teachers rush from offices. The principal calls emergency services. Someone drapes a jacket over Diane's upper body, a futile gesture of dignity. Paramedics arrive at 7:45. They work quickly, checking vitals, applying pressure to the wound. But the blood has already stopped flowing. The body is cold. Good Samaritan Hospital receives the call at 7:52. By the time the ambulance reaches the emergency entrance, there is nothing left to save. The coroner later confirms a single stab wound to the chest. The blade entered between ribs, piercing the heart with surgical precision. Death would have been swift, a matter of seconds, not minutes. The wound is narrow, deliberate. Whoever struck knew exactly where to aim. No murder weapon is recovered from the scene, no defensive wounds on Diane's hands, no signs of struggle beyond the fatal blow itself. The hallway is cordoned off with yellow tape. Crime scene photographers document every angle. Detectives catalog evidence: a scuff mark on the floor, a smudge on the locker, fibers caught on the victim's clothing. Each detail is logged, tagged, preserved. By noon, news vans line the street outside Branham High School. Parents arrive to collect their children early. Teachers stand in clusters, speaking in hushed tones. Some weep openly, Others stare at the building as if seeing it for the first time. Fear settles over the neighborhood like fog. A place meant for learning has become a crime scene. Safety, once assumed, now feels fragile. The principal cancels classes indefinitely. The school year ends not with ceremonies and celebration, but with police interviews and grief counselors. Diane Peterson's classroom door remains locked. Inside, her desk still holds the gradebook she will never complete, the essays she will never return, the plans she will never fulfill. Detectives descend on Branham High School. Like archaeologists excavating a disaster, they move through hallways with notepads and measuring tape, reconstructing Diane Peterson's final hours. Interviews begin immediately. Teachers, custodial staff, anyone who might have seen something unusual. The lead detective is methodical, patient. He listens more than he speaks. His questions are precise, designed to jar loose memories that might otherwise remain buried. A custodian recalls cleaning the building on the evening of June 16. He remembers locking doors, turning off lights, but he also remembers something else, a teenage boy near the English department wing, long after dismissal. The boy seemed agitated, pacing. When the custodian asked if he needed help, the boy muttered something inaudible and walked away. The custodian cannot describe the boy's face. The hallway was dim, the encounter brief, but he remembers the posture, hunched shoulders, hands jammed in pockets, a restless energy that suggested guilt or fear. Detectives press for details. Height, build, clothing. The custodian shakes his head. It was just a kid, just another student. But which student? Teachers are interviewed one by one. They describe Diane as kind, dedicated, firm, but fair. She challenged students who underperformed. She stayed after hours to help those who struggled. She believed everyone deserved a second chance. Did anyone hold a grudge? One teacher hesitates. There was a boy, she says, troubled, angry. He disrupted classes, started fights, skipped assignments. Diane tried to reach him, but he resisted. His name comes up again and again in disciplinary records. Harry Nile Nickerson. Everyone called him Nicky. The detectives create a timeline. Diane Peterson locked her classroom at 3:15. She was seen walking toward the main office minutes later. Somewhere between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, she returned to the English wing. Why remains unclear. The custodian saw a boy near her classroom around 4:15. By 7:30 the next morning, she was dead. The timeline is fragmented, incomplete, but it suggests something deliberate, someone waiting, someone who knew her routine. The San Jose Mercury News runs its first story on June 18. The headline reads, "Teacher Slain at Local High School." The article describes Diane as a beloved educator, a rising star in the district. It mentions no suspects, but the community reads between the lines. Someone murdered a teacher in broad daylight, and that someone is still out there. Parents call the district office demanding answers. Some threaten to withdraw their children. Others organize neighborhood watches. The sense of violation is profound. Schools are supposed to be sanctuaries. Now, they feel like targets. Detectives compile evidence. They photograph the crime scene from every angle. They dust for fingerprints. They collect fiber samples. They interview students who might have seen something, heard something, noticed something out of place. Most remember nothing. A few recall seeing Nicky Nickerson near the school that afternoon. But teenage memories are unreliable, easily influenced by rumor and suggestion. The investigation expands. Detectives search trash bins, examine security logs, review attendance records. They build a profile of the suspect, young, male, familiar with the building's layout, comfortable enough to linger after hours without attracting attention. The pieces begin to align, but alignment is not proof. Suspicion is not evidence, and without a weapon, without fingerprints, without a confession, the case remains open, unresolved, haunting. By late June, detectives have a name: Harry Nile, Nicky Nickerson, 16 years old, a student at Branham High School, a face that appears repeatedly in witness statements. A composite sketch circulates among faculty and staff. The drawing is rough, based on fragmented descriptions: angular jaw, dark hair, eyes set slightly too close. Some teachers recognize the likeness immediately. Others squint, uncertain. But enough people identify the sketch as Nickerson that detectives request a formal interview. Nickerson's disciplinary file paints a troubling portrait: truancy, fights with classmates, defiance toward authority. Teachers describe him as volatile calm one moment, explosive the next. He challenged rules, tested boundaries, seemed to operate under his own internal logic. Diane Peterson's name appears in his file. She had written him up twice for disruptive behavior. She had kept him after class for failing to submit assignments. She had contacted his parents about his declining performance. To some, he was a troubled kid in need of guidance. To others, he was a threat waiting to materialize. Detectives bring Nickerson in for questioning on June 25. He arrives with his parents, who sit stone-faced in the observation room. Nickerson slouches in his chair, arms crossed, expression defiant. The lead detective begins gently. "Where were you on the afternoon of June 16? "Home," Nickerson says, "watching TV. "Anyone confirm that?" "My mom. She was there." "What about later? Around 4 o'clock? "Still home." The detective leans forward. "Several people saw you near the English wing that afternoon." Nickerson shrugs. "Wasn't me." The questioning continues for an hour. Nickerson's answers are curt, defensive. He denies being at the school, denies knowing anything about Diane Peterson's death, denies everything. His parents corroborate his alibi. He was home, they insist. He wouldn't hurt anyone. But detectives know alibi. Testimonies from family members are often unreliable, shaped by loyalty rather than truth. Still, without physical evidence, they cannot charge him. No fingerprints match his. No weapon recovered. No witnesses who can definitively place him at the crime scene. Nickerson leaves the station with his parents. The case stalls. Whispers spread through Branham High School. Students huddle in groups, exchanging theories. Did Nicky do it? He must have. Who else would? Teachers feel uneasy. They avoid Nickerson when he returns to campus for the fall semester. They watch him from a distance, wondering if the boy in their classroom is capable of murder. The San Jose Mercury News runs follow-up stories. No arrests in teacher slaying. Police follow leads in Peterson case. The headlines convey frustration more than progress. Diane Peterson's family holds a press conference. Her mother speaks, voice trembling but firm. "We want justice," she says. "We want whoever did this held accountable. But justice requires proof. And proof remains elusive." Detectives continue investigating. They re-interview witnesses. They search for the murder weapon. They examine Nickerson's locker, his home, his friends' homes. They find nothing. By August, the case goes cold. Nickerson's name becomes synonymous with suspicion. Students avoid him. Teachers treat him with wary distance. He is guilty in the court of public opinion, even if the legal system cannot touch him. And somewhere, buried in the evidence room, the murder weapon remains missing. The single piece of evidence that could confirm or refute everything. The autopsy report arrives in early July. The coroner's findings are clinical, devoid of emotion. But the details tell a story. Diane Peterson died from a single stab wound to the chest. The blade entered between the 4th and 5th ribs, penetrating the pericardium and severing the aorta. Death would have occurred within seconds. She likely collapsed where she stood. No signs of sexual assault, no defensive wounds, no evidence of robbery. Her purse was found intact, wallet untouched. The wound itself is precise. The angle suggests the attacker stood directly in front of her, struck with force and intent. This was not a random act. This was personal. The coroner measures the wound. The blade was narrow, approximately 1 inch wide, single-edged, a knife, most likely, not a kitchen knife. Something smaller, more portable. The kind of blade a teenager might carry. Detectives catalog every item found near the body. A pencil, a hairpin, a scrap of paper with a student's name scrawled in Diane's handwriting, and fibers, tiny threads caught on her blouse, foreign to the fabric itself. The fibers are sent to the lab for analysis. They are synthetic, dark blue, consistent with denim or canvas. Common materials. No immediate match in school records. The murder weapon is absent. Detectives search trash bins, storm drains, nearby bushes. They comb through the school grounds with metal detectors. They find nothing. Whoever killed Diane Peterson took the weapon with them, or disposed of it so thoroughly that it will never be found. On July 10, teachers and students gather for a candlelight vigil. Hundreds attend. They stand in silence outside Branham High School, holding flames against the twilight. Some weep openly. Others stare at the building, struggling to reconcile the place they know with the violence it now represents. Diane's mother speaks briefly. She thanks the community for their support. She asks them to remember her daughter, not as a victim, but as a teacher who loved her students, who believed in their potential, who gave everything to her work. The vigil ends with a moment of silence. Candles flicker in the evening breeze. Then, one by one, people drift away, leaving only shadows and the faint scent of wax. The case files grow thicker. Witness statements, photographs, lab reports, each document a fragment of a puzzle that refuses to resolve. Detectives know they are close. The evidence points to Nickerson. The timeline fits. The motive, resentment, anger, a confrontation gone wrong makes sense. But close is not enough. The law requires certainty. and certainty requires proof they do not have. By late summer, the investigation slows. Detectives move on to other cases. The Peterson file is placed in a cabinet marked Open, Unsolved. Diane's family sends letters to the police department. They call every few months, asking for updates. The answers are always the same. We're still investigating. We haven't forgotten. But as weeks turn to months, the case fades from public consciousness. News cycles move forward. Other tragedies demand attention. Branham High School reopens in September. Teachers return to their classrooms. Students fill the hallways. Life continues, because it must. But in the English wing, Diane Peterson's classroom remains locked. No one has the heart to clear it out. No one wants to erase the last evidence of her presence. The room sits in silence, dust gathering on desks, light filtering through closed blinds. A memorial frozen in time. Nickerson returns to Branham High School in September. He walks through the hallways with his head down, hands jammed in pockets. Students part around him like water around a stone. No one speaks to him. No one meets his eyes. Teachers watch him with a mixture of fear and pity. Is this the boy who killed Diane Peterson? Or is he just another troubled kid caught in a nightmare not of his making? Detectives bring him in for a second interview in October. This time, the questions are sharper, more pointed. They lay out the evidence, the composite sketch, the witness statements, his disciplinary history with Peterson. Nickerson's answers remain consistent. He was home. He didn't do it. He doesn't know anything. His parents sit beside him, silent and pale. They believe him, or they want to believe him. Either way, they will not abandon their son. The interview ends without resolution. Nickerson leaves, still a suspect, still uncharged. Weeks later, a student comes forward with new information. The student claims to have seen Nickerson near the schoolyard trash bins on the afternoon of June 16. Nickerson was holding something metallic, something that caught the light. He dropped it into the trash and walked away quickly. Detectives rush to the location, but the bins have been emptied days ago. The contents hauled to a landfill, buried under tons of refuse. The potential evidence is gone, irretrievable. The lead detective curses under his breath. So close, always so close. Editorial pages in the San Jose Mercury News begin questioning police competence. Why no arrest in Peterson case? Justice, delayed for slain teacher. The articles are critical, accusatory. They suggest incompetence, negligence, failure. The police department responds with carefully worded statements. The investigation is ongoing. We are pursuing all leads. Justice takes time, but the public's patience wears thin. Diane Peterson's family appears on local news, pleading for answers. Her mother's face is drawn, aged by grief. We just want to know why, she says. We just want someone held accountable. Nickerson graduates from Branham High School in 1980. He leaves without fanfare, slipping away from a place that has haunted him for 2 years. Some believe he is guilty. Others believe he is simply unlucky, a scapegoat for an unsolved crime. The truth remains suspended, unknowable. By 1981, Nickerson is arrested for petty theft shoplifting from a convenience store. The charges are minor. He serves probation. Detectives note the arrest but see no connection to violence, no escalation, just a young man making bad choices. The Peterson case file gathers dust. New detectives rotate into the department. They glance at the file, read the summaries, shake their heads. Cold case, they say. Probably never get solved. Diane Peterson's family continues writing letters. They attend police community forums. They remind anyone who will listen that their daughter's killer is still out there. But as the years pass, the urgency fades. The case becomes local folklore, a tragedy everyone remembers but no one can solve. Teachers tell new hires about Diane Peterson, about the murder that shook the school. The story becomes legend, then memory, then myth. San Jose grows, new neighborhoods rise, old ones transform. The city moves forward, as cities do. But in the archives, in the cold case files, Diane Peterson's name remains. A reminder. A wound that never quite heals. The 1980s pass in silence. The Peterson case becomes a footnote in the department's history. Detectives retire, new ones take their place. The file is transferred from cabinet to cabinet, always present, rarely opened. Diane Peterson's family never stops asking. They call the police department every 6 months. Any updates? Any progress? The answers are polite but empty. We're doing everything we can. These cases take time. But time is not progress. Time is erosion. Time is forgetting. In 1983, Nickerson is arrested again. Possession of stolen property. He pleads guilty, serves a short sentence. His criminal record grows, but none of his offenses involve violence, theft, possession, minor infractions, nothing that suggests he is capable of murder. Defense attorneys could argue this proves innocence. A violent killer would escalate, wouldn't he? A murderer at 16 would commit more murders, wouldn't he? But detectives know better. Some killers strike once, then retreat into normalcy. Some crimes are singular, born of specific circumstances, specific rage, specific moments that can never be replicated. The community remembers. Teachers at Branham High School still speak Diane Peterson's name with reverence. They tell new students about the teacher who loved her work, who believed in second chances, who died too young. Parents warn their children, be careful, trust no one completely. The world is not as safe as it seems. The case becomes a cautionary tale, a reminder that violence can happen anywhere, even in quiet suburbs, even in places built for learning, even to people who dedicate their lives to helping others. By 1985, the Peterson family holds a small memorial service. 7 years have passed. The wound has not healed, but it has changed shape. Grief becomes acceptance. Hope becomes resignation. Diane's mother speaks at the service. She talks about her daughter's kindness, her dedication, her bright future cut short. She does not mention Nickerson by name. She does not demand justice. She simply remembers. The service ends quietly. Attendees drift away. Life continues. In 1987, a documentary crew contacts the San Jose Police Department. They want to feature the Peterson case in a program about unsolved murders. The department declines. Too sensitive, they say. Too many open questions. The crew moves on to other stories. Diane Peterson remains in the shadows. By the time the 1990s arrive, the case is nearly forgotten. Younger officers have never heard of it. Older ones mention it only in passing, a tragedy from another era, before modern forensics, before DNA analysis, before the tools that make solving murders easier. But easier is not the same as solve. In 1989, a rumor surfaces. A former student approaches detectives with a strange claim. Years ago, he says, Nickerson showed him a knife. The blade was engraved with words, "Teacher dear." The detective's pulse quickens. Teacher dear. Diane Peterson's students called her that. It was a term of endearment, spoken with affection and respect. But engraved on a knife? That transforms endearment into obsession. The detective asks for details. What did the knife look like? When did you see it? The former student hesitates. It was a long time ago. Maybe 1978. Maybe 1979. The memory is hazy, unreliable. Did you report it at the time? No. I didn't think it mattered. The detective adds the information to the file. But without the knife itself, the claim is useless. Hearsay. Speculation. Another dead end in a case built entirely of dead ends. San Jose continues evolving. The city grows wealthier, more diverse, more anyone connected. Branham High School undergoes renovations. New paint, new lockers, new flooring in the English wing. But the memory of Diane Peterson lingers. Teachers still feel uneasy walking those halls after hours. Students still hear the story, whispered like a ghost tale. The case has no resolution, only silence, only waiting. The rumor about the knife refuses to die. It circulates among former students, whispered at reunions, shared over drinks. Did you hear about the knife Nikki had? Did you hear what it said? In 1991, another former classmate contacts police. This one is more specific. He remembers Nickerson showing off a knife during their sophomore year. The blade was small, maybe 3 inches. The engraving read, "Teacher dear." Nickerson laughed when he showed it, the classmate recalls. He said it was a joke, but his eyes were cold. Detectives reopen the Peterson file. They examine the autopsy report again. The wound dimensions match a small blade. The angle suggests someone standing face to face with the victim. Could the knife have been a gift? A token of affection twisted into a weapon? The detectives search for the knife. They contact pawn shops, antique dealers, collectors. They issue bulletins describing the engraving. They offer rewards for information. Nothing surfaces. If the knife existed, it is long gone. Destroyed, discarded, buried somewhere it will never be found. But the rumor rekindles old fears. Teachers at Branham High School read the news reports and feel a chill. They remember Diane Peterson. They remember how safe they once felt. They wonder if they are safe now. Parents question whether schools are doing enough to protect faculty. Should there be more security, more protocols, more oversight? The district responds with vague assurances. We take safety seriously. We are always reviewing our procedures. But words do not erase fear. Fear lives in the body, in the instinct to glance over one's shoulder, to lock doors twice, and question the motives of troubled students. The rumor also reignites speculation about Nickerson's guilt. If he carried a knife engraved with "Teacher dear," the intent seems clear. This was not a random act. This was premeditated, personal. But premeditation requires proof. And proof requires the weapon, and the weapon is gone. Diane Peterson's family learns about the rumor through newspaper coverage. They contact detectives immediately. Does this mean progress? Does this mean an arrest is coming? The detective, assigned to the case now in his 50s, gray-haired, weary, explains gently, "It's a lead, it's important, but without the physical knife, we can't charge anyone." The family's hope flickers, then dims. Another near miss, another almostness. By 1993, the rumor fades again. It becomes one more fragment in a case built of fragments. One more tantalizing detail that leads nowhere. Nickerson, now in his early 30s, continues his downward spiral. He moves between jobs, between relationships, between cities. His criminal record grows: theft, drug possession, assault. Each arrest adds another line to his file. Each conviction adds another layer to his reputation. Detectives note the pattern: a life collapsing under its own weight, a man running from something. But running from what? Guilt? Poverty? Mental illness? Addiction? Or all of the above? Teachers who remember Diane Peterson gather informally each year on the anniversary of her death. They meet at a coffee shop near the school. They share memories. They light a candle. They promise not to forget. Some still teach at Branham. Others have retired, moved away, started new lives. But they all carry the same wound: the loss of a colleague, the violation of a safe space, the question that will never be answered to their satisfaction. Why Diane? Why that day? Why at all? The questions have no answers, only echoes. In 1984, Nickerson's life takes a violent turn. He is involved in a botched drug robbery. Shots are fired. He is struck twice, once in the shoulder, once in the abdomen. He collapses in an alley, bleeding into the pavement. Paramedics arrive in time. They rush him to the hospital. Surgeons work through the night. His survival is uncertain. Detectives monitoring his case learn about the incident. They visit the hospital, hoping that a near-death experience might loosen his tongue. Sometimes, facing mortality makes people confess. Sometimes, the weight of guilt becomes unbearable. Nickerson lies in the ICU, machines beeping, tubes running from his arms. His face is pale, drawn. He drifts in and out of consciousness. Nurses overhear him muttering in his sleep, "It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to happen." One nurse writes it down, mentions it to the detectives. The lead detective leans forward. What wasn't supposed to happen? But Nickerson is delirious, incoherent. He cannot clarify. He cannot explain. His words dissolve into mumbling. The detectives try questioning him when he stabilizes, but Nickerson's lawyer blocks the interview. His client is in no condition to speak. Any statement obtained under these circumstances would be inadmissible. Nickerson recovers slowly. He is released from the hospital after 2 weeks. He says nothing about the Peterson case, nothing about the muttering, nothing that could be used in court. The moment passes. The opportunity is lost. The San Jose Mercury News runs a brief article about the robbery. It mentions Nickerson's criminal history in passing. Some readers remember his connection to the Peterson case. They write letters to the editor. "Isn't this the boy suspected of killing that teacher? Why hasn't he been arrested?" The police department declines to comment. The case remains open. The investigation continues. But the investigation has stalled. There is nowhere left to go, no new evidence, no new witnesses, just the same old files, the same old frustrations. Nickerson's near-death experience changes nothing. He remains free. He remains suspected. He remains untouchable. In 1993, Nickerson's life ends. He takes his own life in a rented room. No note, no explanation. Just a final act of desperation. The news reaches the San Jose Police Department within hours. The detective assigned to the Peterson case, now nearing retirement, receives the call. He sits at his desk, staring at the file folder. Diane Peterson, Harry Nickerson, open, unsolved. Now, one of those names is dead, and the other will never receive justice. The detective closes the file. He places it back in the cabinet. He feels the weight of 15 years pressing down on him. All those hours, all those leads, all that effort. And it ends like this, without resolution, without confession, without closure. He wonders if Diane Peterson's family will feel relief or rage. Probably both. He wonders if Nickerson was guilty. Probably yes. He wonders if he will ever know for certain. Probably not. When Nickerson's body is processed, investigators catalog his belongings: a wallet with $18, a pack of cigarettes, a set of keys, and a photograph worn, folded, discolored by time. The photograph shows Branham High School. The building is younger in the image, the paint fresher, the lawn greener. It was taken in the late 1970 seconds before the murder, before everything changed. Why did Nickerson carry this photograph? Was it nostalgia? Regret? Guilt? Detectives add the photo to his file. They note the date of his death. They note the absence of a confession. They close his case folder. But Diane Peterson's file remains open. Teachers at Branham High School learn of Nickerson's death through news reports. Some feel relief the suspected killer is gone. Others feel anger he died without admitting what he did. A few feel sadness a troubled boy became a broken man, and no one could save him. A small group gathers quietly to remember Diane Peterson. They do not mourn Nickerson. They do not speak his name. They simply light candles and stand in silence, honoring the teacher who believed in second chances. The gathering is not publicized. There are no speeches. Just a moment of shared grief, shared memory. Diane's family receives a call from the police department. They are informed of Nickerson's death. The detective explains that while Nickerson was never charged, he remained the primary suspect. His death closes that avenue of investigation. Diane's mother listens in silence. Then she asks, "Do you think he did it?" The detective hesitates. "I believe he did, but I can't prove it. Will you keep investigating?" "We'll do what we can." But without new evidence, there's nowhere to go. The call ends. Diane's mother sits in her living room, surrounded by photographs of her daughter. She feels hollow. Justice delayed has become justice denied. Over the following years, the case fades further from public consciousness. Nickerson's death removes the last active suspect. Without someone to blame, the story loses momentum. But cold cases do not die. They hibernate. They wait. In 2003, a new generation of detectives joins the San Jose Police Department. They are young, ambitious, eager to prove themselves. They are trained in modern forensic techniques, DNA analysis, digital databases, advanced profiling. They review old files, looking for cases that might benefit from new technology. The Peterson case catches one detective's attention: a murder at a high school. A single stab wound. A suspect who died without confessing. The detective requests the evidence. He wants to see if anything can be retested with modern methods. The evidence is stored in a climate-controlled facility. Boxes labeled Peterson, Diane, 1978, are retrieved from shelves. Inside, her blouse, sealed in plastic, hair samples, fabric swabs from the hallway floor, photographs, notes. The detective examines each item carefully. Decades have passed, but the evidence remains preserved. The blood on the blouse is still visible. The fibers still cling to the fabric. He sends samples to the state crime lab with a simple request: DNA analysis. The wait begins. The cold case initiative gains traction in the mid-2000s. Departments across California receive funding to revisit unsolved murders. The Peterson case is among hundreds flagged for review. Detectives compile every document, every photograph, every witness statement. They digitize files that were once stored only on paper. They create databases that can be searched, cross-referenced, analyzed. The work is painstaking. Each case requires hours of review. Each lead must be verified. Each witness must be recontacted, if possible. Many witnesses have moved away. Some have died. Others no longer remember details clearly. Time erodes memory the way water erodes stone slowly, inevitably. But some remember everything. A former teacher at Branham High School agrees to an interview. She is in her 70s now, retired, living in a senior community near the coast. But when she speaks about Diane Peterson, her voice steadies. Her eyes sharpen. "I remember her smile," the teacher says. "She had this way of making you feel like everything would be okay, even when it wasn't." "Did you ever feel unsafe at the school?" "Not before, not until." She trails off. The detective waits. After it happened, everything changed. We locked doors. We watched students more closely. We stopped staying late by ourselves. Fear became part of the routine. The detective asks about Nickerson. The teacher's expression hardens. "I taught him for one semester. He was angry. Always angry. He argued with everyone. But angry doesn't mean murderer." "Do you think he did it?" The teacher pauses. "I think he could have, but I also think we'll never know for sure." The interview ends. The detective adds her statement to the growing file. Other former students are contacted. Most have only vague memories. It was a long time ago. They were kids. They remember the fear more than the details. One former student, now a teacher himself, reflects on the impact. "It taught me that safety is an illusion," he says, "that violence can happen anywhere. I think about that every time I lock my classroom door." The societal wound runs deep. The murder did not just take Diane Peterson's life. It changed how an entire community understood safety, trust, authority. In 2007, detectives organize a public forum. They invite anyone connected to the case, former students, teachers, witnesses, to share information. Maybe someone remembers something they did not realize was important. The forum is held at the San Jose Public Library. 30 people attend. They sit in folding chairs, sipping coffee from paper cups, exchanging nervous glances. The lead detective explains the purpose. We believe someone out there knows something, a conversation overheard, a rumor that seemed unimportant at the time. Anything could help. An older man raises his hand. He was a janitor at the school in 1978. He recalls cleaning the hallways after the crime scene was processed. He remembers the blood stain on the floor, how it took days to scrub away, how he thought about it every time he mopped that hallway afterward. But he has no new information. Just memory, just trauma. A woman in her 50s speaks next. She was Diane Peterson's student. She remembers the last essay she submitted, an analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird. Diane gave her an A and wrote an encouraging note in the margin. The woman still has the essay, stored in a box in her attic. I kept it because she made me believe I could write, the woman says. She made me believe I was smart. I became an English teacher because of her. Tears slide down her cheeks. The room falls silent. The forum yields no concrete leads, but it serves another purpose. It reminds everyone that Diane Peterson was not just a case file. She was a person, a teacher, a daughter, someone who mattered. The community's memory is fragile but persistent. The case may be cold, but it is not forgotten. In 2023, the samples reached the state crime lab. Technology has advanced dramatically since the 1990s. DNA profiling is faster, more accurate, capable of extracting genetic material from degraded evidence. The forensic analyst assigned to the Peterson case is meticulous. She handles the evidence with reverence, understanding that this is not just a scientific exercise. This is someone's daughter, someone's justice. She examines the blouse first. The bloodstains are Diane Peterson's. That much is confirmed through comparison with family DNA. But there are other traces. Touch DNA. Skin cells left behind by contact. The analyst swabs areas where the attacker might have grabbed or touched the fabric. She isolates genetic material. She amplifies it using polymerase chain reaction. She builds a profile. The process takes weeks. Each step must be documented, verified, repeated. The standards for forensic evidence are rigorous. A single mistake could render the results inadmissible. Finally, the profile is complete. The analyst uploads it into CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, a national database of genetic profiles from convicted offenders and unsolved crimes. She waits for a match. Days pass, then weeks. No match appears. The analyst expands the search. She checks familial DNA looking for relatives whose genetic profiles might point to the suspect. She checks missing persons databases. She checks unidentified remains. Nothing. The DNA exists. It is real. It belongs to someone. But that someone is not in any database. The analyst writes her report. DNA evidence recovered. Profile established. No match in CODIS or related databases. Results inconclusive due to degradation. Recommend further investigation if new samples become available. The report reaches the San Jose Police Department in late 2023. Detectives read it with a mixture of hope and frustration. Progress, but not enough. A profile, but no name. The lead detective considers the implications. If the DNA does not match anyone in the system, and Nickerson is dead so no comparison sample exists, then the case remains exactly where it was suspended between suspicion and proof. Media outlets learn about the DNA testing. They run stories with cautious headlines. Decades-old teacher murder case revisited with modern DNA technology. The articles are measured, avoiding promises they cannot keep. Social media users discover the story. Hashtags emerge. Number Justice for Diane and number Branham Cold Case. True crime enthusiasts dissect the evidence online, building theories, debating possibilities. The Peterson family watches the renewed attention with weary hope. They have been here before, moments when the case seemed close to resolution, only to slip away again. Diane's sister, now in her 60s, gives an interview to a local news station. She stands outside Branham High School, the building looming behind her. 45 years, she says. That's how long we've waited. People tell us to move on, to find peace. But how can you find peace when the person who killed your sister is never held accountable? The reporter asks if she believes Nickerson was guilty. The sister's jaw tightens. I know he was. Everyone knows he was. But knowing and proving are different things. The segment airs during the evening news. Viewers call in with tips, most of which lead nowhere. Someone claims to have seen Nickerson years ago, acting strange. Someone else swears they heard him confess in a bar. The tips are well-meaning but useless memories warped by time and desire to help. Detectives follow up on each one anyway. They cannot afford to dismiss anything, not after 45 years. By the end of 2023, the case returns to its familiar state, open, unsolved, waiting. Then, in early 2025, everything changes. A phone call arrives at the Santa Clara County District Attorney's office. The caller is nervous, hesitant. They identify themselves as a family member of Harry Nickerson. The receptionist transfers the call to a prosecutor specializing in cold cases. The prosecutor listens as the caller explains why they are coming forward now. Years ago, the caller says, during a family gathering, Nickerson got drunk, very drunk, and he started talking about the past, about things he regretted, about things that haunted him. The prosecutor leans forward. What did he say? He said he killed his teacher. He said it wasn't supposed to happen. They got into an argument, something about his grades, about him failing. She wouldn't back down. She kept pushing, and he just snapped. The prosecutor's pulse quickens. Did he say how? He had a knife. He always carried it. He said he pulled it out to scare her, to make her stop talking. But she didn't stop. She reached for it, tried to take it away, and he pushed forward. Just once. He said it was so fast he didn't even realize what he'd done until she fell. How long ago was this conversation? Early 90s, maybe 1992, right before he died. Why didn't you come forward then? The caller's voice breaks. I was scared. We all were. Nicky was. He was dangerous when he was angry. And then he died, and I thought it didn't matter anymore. I thought it was over. What changed? I saw the news story about the DNA testing, about the family still waiting for answers. And I realized it does matter. It still matters. The prosecutor thanks the caller, assures them they did the right thing, promises to follow up. When the call ends, the prosecutor sits in silence. A confession, after all these years, a confession. But the confessor is dead. There can be no trial, no conviction, no punishment. Still, there can be truth. There can be closure. There can be acknowledgement. The prosecutor contacts the San Jose Police Department. They schedule a meeting. They review every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every detail from 1978 forward. The confession aligns with everything. The timeline, the weapon description, the motive, the location, even the phrasing, "it wasn't supposed to happen," matches what nurses heard Nickerson mutter in 1984. Detectives cross-reference the caller's account with archived evidence. They verify the caller's identity, confirm their relationship to Nickerson, establish their credibility. Everything checks out. The Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office makes a decision. They will officially identify Harry Nile Nicky Nickerson as Diane Peterson's killer. They will close the case. They will give the family the answer they have waited 47 years to hear. The press conference is scheduled for March 2025. The Santa Clara County Courthouse is packed. Reporters line the walls. Cameras fill the back of the room. Diane Peterson's family sits in the front row. Her mother, now in her 90s, her sister, nieces, and nephews who never knew their aunt. The district attorney steps to the podium. The room falls silent. After 47 years, the district attorney begins. We can finally provide answers to the Peterson family and to the community of San Jose. Based on new information received in early 2025, corroborated by decades of investigative evidence, we have officially identified Harry Nile Nickerson as the perpetrator in the murder of Diane Peterson. The room erupts. Reporters shout questions. Cameras flash. The district attorney raises a hand for silence. Nickerson confessed to a family member in the early 1990s. That family member came forward this year. We have verified the confession against all existing evidence. Everything aligns. The timeline, the method, the motive. We are confident in this identification. A reporter calls out, "Why did it take so long?" The porter guarded. District attorney's expression is somber. Cold cases are complex. Evidence degrades. Witnesses die. Technology evolves. But we never stopped working. The detectives assigned to this case over the decades never gave up, and ultimately, someone with knowledge came forward. That's how justice happens, through persistence and courage. Another reporter, will there be charges? Nickerson died in 1993. There can be no criminal prosecution. But the case is officially solved. The Peterson family has their answer. The district attorney steps aside. Diane Peterson's sister approaches the microphone. Her hands tremble. Her voice does not. For 47 years, she says, we have lived with a hole in our hearts. Diane was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a teacher who believed in helping others. She deserved justice. She deserved to be remembered. She pauses, gathering herself. Today doesn't bring Diane back. It doesn't erase the pain. But it gives us something we haven't had in nearly 5 decades. Truth. We know who killed our sister. We know why. And we know that even though the legal system couldn't punish him, the truth has finally been spoken. She looks directly into the cameras. To the person who came forward, thank you. It took courage. It took conscience. You gave our family a gift we thought we'd never receive. The press conference ends. The family leaves through a side door, avoiding the crowd. But outside, people are waiting. Former students, teachers, community members. They hold signs. Justice for Diane. We remember. Truth matters. The family stops. Diane's mother, frail but determined, addresses the crowd. Diane would have been proud of all of you, she says. She believed in truth. She believed in doing what's right, even when it's hard. Thank you for never forgetting her. The crowd applauds. Some weep. National news networks pick up the story within hours. California cold case solved after 47 years. Family members. Confession closes decades-old teacher murder. The coverage is extensive, respectful. True crime podcasts dedicate episodes to the case. They interview former detectives, forensic analysts, community members. They trace the investigation from 1978 to 2025, highlighting the persistence that kept the case alive. Online forums explode with discussion. Some debate the reliability of a second-hand confession. Others praise the family member who came forward. Most simply express relief that the Peterson family finally has answers. At Branham High School, the principal calls an assembly. Students fill the auditorium, unaware of the history about to be shared. The principal explains what happened in 1978. She describes Diane Peterson, her dedication, her kindness, her belief in second chances. She explains how the case remained unsolved for decades, and she announces that, finally, the truth has emerged. The students listen in silence. For them, 1978 is ancient history, but the story resonates. Violence in a school, a teacher who believed in her students, justice delayed but not denied. The principal invites former students who knew Diane Peterson to speak. 3 stand now in their 60s, gray-haired, moved by emotion. One describes the last class she attended, the last words Diane spoke to them. Believe in yourselves. The world needs what you have to offer. Another recalls how Diane stayed after school to help him with an essay, how her patience changed his trajectory. The third simply says, she saw the best in people, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. The assembly ends with a moment of silence. Then the principal announces a new initiative, the Diane Peterson Memorial Scholarship, awarded annually to a student pursuing a career in education. The students applaud. The story is no longer just history, it is legacy. Diane Peterson's family holds a private memorial at a cemetery overlooking San Jose. The gathering is small, immediate family, a few close friends, the detectives who never gave up on the case. Diane's mother places flowers on the headstone. The inscription reads, Diane Peterson, beloved teacher, 1952-1978. We finally know, her mother whispers. We finally know. Diane's sister reads a letter she wrote to her sister decades ago but never sent. It speaks of grief, of anger, of hope that someday truth would emerge. Her voice cracks as she reaches the end. You deserve better, she says. You deserved a full life, but at least now, your story has an ending. At least now, people know what happened. The detectives stand at a distance, respectful. One of them, the detective who reopened the case in 2003, approaches the family afterward. I'm sorry it took so long, he says. Diane's sister shakes her head. You never stopped trying. That's what matters. The detective nods, his eyes damp. He has worked dozens of cases over his career. But this one felt personal. A teacher, a school, a community that never forgot. As the gathering disperses, Diane's mother lingers by the grave. She touches the headstone, tracing her daughter's name with her fingers. Rest now, she says. Rest. In the weeks following the announcement, other cold case families reach out to the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. They ask if their cases can be revisited. They ask if new technology, new methods, new persistence might bring them the same closure. The district attorney promises to review every unsolved case. The Peterson case has proven that truth can emerge, even after decades, that someone, somewhere, might carry knowledge that changes everything. Funding for cold case units increases. The state legislature passes a bill expanding DNA testing for unsolved crimes. Diane Peterson's name is mentioned during the floor debate, a symbol of persistence, of justice delayed but not abandoned. Forensic analysts at the State Crime Lab receive additional resources. They begin retesting evidence from cases dating back to the 1972 and 1980s. Some yield results, some do not. But every attempt honors the victims, the families, the belief that truth matters. At Branham High School, a plaque is unveiled near the main entrance. It reads, In memory of Diane Peterson, 1952-1978, beloved teacher. Her dedication to her students and her belief in second chances inspire us still. Truth, even long delayed, honors those we have lost. Students pass the plaque daily. Most pause to read it. Some research the story. Teachers use it as a teaching moment about justice, about memory, about the importance of never giving up. The hallway where Diane Peterson died has been renovated multiple times over the decades. The floors are new, the lockers are different, the paint is fresh, but the space remembers, the building remembers, and now, finally, the building can breathe. On a quiet evening in late spring, a journalist visits Branham High School. The campus is empty, classes dismissed for the day, sunlight filters through the trees, casting long shadows across the lawn. The journalist walks through the English department wing, guided by old photographs and floor plans. She finds the spot where Diane Peterson fell. Nothing marks it now, just a hallway like any other. But she pauses there. She thinks about the teacher who believed in second chances, the student who betrayed that belief, the 47 years it took for truth to emerge. She thinks about the family who never stopped asking questions, the detectives who never closed the file, the person who finally spoke up, breaking decades of silence. Justice, she realizes, is not always swift. Sometimes it arrives in fragments, over decades, through the courage of people who refuse to forget. She leaves the school as twilight settles. The building stands quiet, watchful, holding its stories close. Somewhere in San Jose, Diane Peterson's family gathers for dinner. They talk about her openly now, without the shadow of unknowing. They share memories, her laugh, her handwriting, the way she hummed while grading papers. The grief has not disappeared, it never will, but it has changed shape. It no longer feels like an open wound. It feels like a scar tender, permanent, but healed. In the archives of the San Jose Police Department, the Peterson file is marked, closed, solved. It joins the ranks of cases resolved through persistence, technology, and human courage. The file is thick, decades of documents, photographs, witness statements, but the final page is simple, a single sentence typed in bold, perpetrator identified, Harry Nile Nickerson. Case closed, and beneath it, in handwriting that belongs to the detective who worked the case for 20 years, for Diane, finally,